The air was thick with the smell of charcoal and sizzling burgers. It was a beautiful late June afternoon, and I was just flipping a patty, feeling pretty good about life, when Sophia's best friend, Brenda, leaned in close. Her breath reeked of vodka. She looked me straight in the eye and asked, "When are you finally going to leave her?" "My name's David." I was 34, running a small landscaping company I'd built from the ground up, and honestly, up until that very second, I thought I had everything figured out. Sophia and I had been married for 9 years. We had this beautiful house in Maplewood Heights that I'd renovated almost entirely by myself. From the outside, we were that couple, the ones who had it all. Kids weren't in the picture yet because Sophia was focused on her career at a marketing firm in Metropolitan Plaza, and I respected that. I figured we had time. I trusted her completely, you know? Never checked her phone, never questioned where she was, never had that nagging doubt. Looking back now, that wasn't trust. That was just me being completely, utterly oblivious. This barbecue, it was Sophia's idea to celebrate her recent promotion to senior account manager. She'd invited maybe 20 people, mostly her coworkers, plus a few of my friends. My business partner, Mark, was here with his wife, Chloe. My sister, Sarah, had shown up early to help me prep. I'd spent the whole morning setting up tables, stringing lights, stocking coolers with beer. Sophia was buzzing around in a sundress I'd never seen before, laughing louder than usual. I just thought she was happy, thrilled about the promotion. I stood there, tongs in hand, watching the burgers sizzle, listening to the chatter, thinking, man, this is exactly the life I worked for. Brenda showed up around 2 o'clock, already pretty tipsy, which wasn't unusual. She had a reputation for being the messy friend, the one who said whatever was on her mind after a few drinks. She and Sophia had been best friends since college. Brenda prided herself on brutal honesty, which really just meant she was rude and blamed it on the alcohol. She went straight to the cooler, grabbed a beer, and then posted up right next to me at the grill. I could smell the vodka when she asked how the burgers were coming along. She stood there, swaying slightly, watching me. And then she asked, "Has Sophia told you about Kevin yet?" I had no idea who Kevin was. I looked up from the grill, confused, and asked, "What do you mean?" Brenda let out this sharp, bitter laugh. "She really hasn't told you?" She took a long drink, glanced around, checking who was listening, and then she said it. Loud enough that conversations nearby just started dying down. "When are you finally going to leave her?" It wasn't even a question. It was an accusation. I watched Mark across the yard start walking towards us. Sarah froze mid-sentence, turning to stare. The people standing closest to me went completely silent. I just stood there, tongs in hand, smoke rising behind me, asking Brenda what she was talking about. She tilted her head, like I was a child who couldn't grasp something obvious, and asked, "You really don't know?" I told her I didn't know anything. And that's when her eyes went wide. She looked genuinely scared for a second. She put a hand over her mouth and whispered, "Wait, he doesn't know." I heard someone gasp. Then I saw Sophia coming out the back door, carrying a tray of buns. She took one look at the scene, Brenda next to me, everyone silent, staring, and the tray just slipped from her hands. It crashed onto the deck. Buns went everywhere. The ceramic plate shattered into pieces. Sophia just stood frozen. I looked at my wife, then back at Brenda, and asked, "What am I supposed to know?" Brenda glanced at Sophia, then back at me. "Kevin from the office," she started. "They've been together," and she trailed off, because she didn't need to finish. I saw it written all over Sophia's face. My wife looked absolutely panicked. She started walking towards me, her hands up in some kind of pleading gesture. I kept my eyes locked on her and asked, "Is it true?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. Then she managed, "We should talk inside." "No," I said, my voice steady, maybe a little too steady. "We can talk right here." since apparently everyone except me already knew. Sophia started crying, mascara running down her face. She looked at Brenda. You had no right. Brenda just shrugged. Somebody needed to tell him. That's when it hit me. This wasn't new information to anyone but me. I looked around at the faces in my backyard. Sophia's coworkers, people I'd fed and entertained. I could see the guilt, the discomfort in their expressions. They knew. I asked Sophia, how long? She shook her head. We need privacy. I raised my voice, not yelling, but firm. Answer the question. She looked down at the broken plate on the deck and whispered, 8 months. 8 months. I'd been planning our 10-year anniversary trip for 8 months. Working extra jobs to save for a bigger house for 8 months. And the whole time, she'd been sleeping with someone else. Sarah grabbed my arm, suggesting we go inside. Mark started trying to herd guests toward the front yard, but I told everyone to stay exactly where they were. If this is happening, I said, it's happening with witnesses. Sophia begged me not to do this. Said we could work it out. Said it was a mistake. I asked if she loved him. She didn't answer. That was an answer itself. Then Brenda, ever the instigator, added that Sophia had been talking to a divorce attorney 3 weeks ago, asking about asset division. That was it. I pulled up my phone and texted my attorney, Christine, right there. Told her I needed an emergency meeting first thing Monday. Told her I wanted the most aggressive divorce possible. Sophia saw me typing. What are you doing? She asked. I looked up. You have until the end of today to pack and get out. You can figure out where to go, but you're not sleeping under my roof tonight. Sarah started to say, maybe you should think this through, but I cut her off. A car pulled up front. Someone started calling Sophia's name. One of her coworkers went to check and came back. It's Kevin, she said. Apparently, Sophia had texted him during the confrontation. He came around the side, looking confused. When he saw Sophia crying, he started toward her. I stepped between them. Get off my property. Mark grabbed my shoulders, saying, it's not worth it, David. Kevin backed up, mumbling he didn't want any trouble. I watched him get back in his car and drive away while Sophia sobbed. I went inside, grabbed my laptop and some work files, threw a few clothes in a bag, and walked past everyone without another word. Got in my truck and drove to a hotel on the outskirts of town. Checked in, sat on the edge of the bed. My phone started blowing up, texts from Sophia, from Sarah, from people at the party. I just turned it off and stared at the wall. 9 years. Gone. In one drunken confession at a barbecue I'd spent all morning preparing for. I spent that night going through every memory of the past 8 months, trying to figure out how I'd missed it. The business trip Sophia took in March, the one she said was mandatory. The girls' nights that became more frequent. The way she started keeping her phone face down on the table. All these little things I'd brushed off now looked exactly like what they were, a pattern of lying and sneaking around. Around 6 in the morning, I turned my phone back on. It immediately started buzzing. Sophia had sent 43 texts, ranging from apologies to anger to begging me to come home. Sarah had sent a dozen, asking if I was okay. Mark sent one that just said, I've got your back. I ignored them all. I called Christine's office the second they opened Monday morning. Christine had handled the legal paperwork when I started my landscaping company, and I trusted her. She was sharp, didn't waste time. I met her at her office at 8:30 and laid out everything that had happened. She listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, she asked if I had any proof beyond Brenda's confession. I told her I had 20 witnesses who heard Sophia not deny it. And Brenda had mentioned Sophia already consulting a divorce attorney, which meant she'd been planning this. Christine said that was good, but we needed more. We needed documentation, messages, anything that would prove Sophia had been strategically positioning herself to leave with half of everything I'd built. I told Christine about the house, how I'd bought it as a fixer-upper before we got married, and spent 3 years renovating it, mostly with my own labor. How the landscaping business was something I'd started from nothing. Sophia had contributed financially once she started making decent money, but the foundation of everything came from my work. Christine asked about joint accounts and shared assets, and that's when it hit me: Sophia had access to everything. Our savings, the business account, even the credit cards tied to my company expenses. Christine's voice was firm: "We need to protect your assets today, David, not tomorrow." We spent the next 2 hours going through financial documents. Christine made calls to freeze joint accounts and set up new ones in just my name. She contacted my bank, got them to flag any large withdrawals or transfers from our shared savings, and helped me move my business funds into a completely separate account Sophia couldn't touch. She also drafted a formal separation agreement and said we needed to serve Sophia with divorce papers as soon as possible. Christine asked if I wanted to try mediation or go straight to litigation. I told her I wanted the most aggressive approach because Sophia had already shown she was willing to plan behind my back. She started outlining our strategy. We'd file for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. We'd fight for me to keep the house based on my pre-marriage ownership and renovation investment. And we'd argue that the business was mine since I'd founded it before we married. The problem was, Sophia's name was on the house title because I'd added her after we got married, thinking it was the right thing to do. Christine said that complicated things, but wasn't impossible, especially if we could prove I'd put significantly more into the property than Sophia had. I pulled up records showing I'd paid the down payment from my savings. I'd done most of the renovation work myself, which saved tens of thousands in contractor costs. Sophia's only real contribution had been helping with mortgage payments for the last 4 years. Christine said we'd need receipts for materials, permits I'd pulled, anything showing my personal investment. I told her I kept all that stuff. I'm obsessive about documentation for my business. She actually smiled. "That," she said, "is going to save you." By the time I left Christine's office, it was almost noon, and I had a plan. I drove to my sister Sarah's place. I needed to talk to someone who wasn't a lawyer. She opened the door, looking worried, and immediately hugged me. We sat in her kitchen, and she made coffee while I explained everything Christine had said. Sarah listened, then asked if I was sure I didn't want to at least hear Sophia out, maybe go to counseling. I told her Sophia had been planning this for months, had only gotten caught because her drunk friend had a big mouth. There was nothing to hear out. Sarah said she understood, but she was worried about me making permanent decisions while angry. I told her I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. There's a difference between being pissed off and being completely finished with someone. My phone rang. It was Mark, asking if I wanted to meet up. I met him at this dive bar near his warehouse, middle of the afternoon on a weekday. He'd already ordered me a beer by the time I sat down. He asked how I was holding up, and I gave him the short version about Christine and filing for divorce. Mark nodded. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. He told me Chloe had known about the affair. His wife had known for about a month because one of Sophia's coworkers had mentioned it at some work event, and Chloe had been trying to figure out how to tell me without blowing up my life. Mark apologized for his wife keeping it from me. I told him it wasn't his fault. At least now I knew the truth. Mark asked if I needed anything. I said what I really needed was to know who else had been aware of this. Mark said he'd ask around quietly. Then he told me something interesting. Kevin had a reputation at Sophia's firm for this kind of thing. He'd been through a messy separation from his own wife, Jessica, about 6 months ago over similar issues. And apparently, they were still in the middle of their divorce proceedings. So Sophia had picked a guy who was already destroying his own marriage to help destroy mine. Mark said Jessica might be worth talking to since she'd been through Kevin's patterns before. I went back to the hotel that night and found an email from Christine. Divorce papers were ready. We could serve Sophia on Wednesday. She'd also managed to get me an emergency hearing to establish temporary orders protecting my business assets and preventing either of us from selling or mortgaging the house without court approval. My phone buzzed with another text from Sophia, saying we needed to talk about the house and money. I didn't respond. From now on, everything went through lawyers. Sophia got served with divorce papers at her office on Wednesday. According to Christine's process server, she'd made a scene, crying in front of her coworkers before locking herself in a conference room. Christine called me that afternoon, saying Sophia's attorney, Natalie, had already reached out trying to negotiate, which meant Sophia was panicking. The temporary orders had gone through. The judge had frozen all major assets pending the divorce proceedings. Sophia had moved in with another coworker, according to Sarah, not Brenda, interestingly enough. I told my sister I didn't want updates about Sophia's life. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of documentation and meetings with Christine. We built our case, focusing on my pre-marriage ownership of the house, my personal investment in renovations, and the fact that my landscaping business existed independently of the marriage. Christine had me pull together every receipt from the house projects, every permit, every invoice for materials I'd purchased over 3 years of renovations. I found boxes of paperwork showing I'd spent close to $80,000 in materials alone, not counting the hundreds of hours I'd put in doing the work myself. Christine said if we valued my labor at even a modest contractor rate, we could argue I'd invested well over $200,000 into a property I'd bought before marrying Sophia. Christine also subpoenaed Sophia's phone records and work emails through Discovery. And that's when things got really interesting. The phone records showed months of calls and texts between Sophia and Kevin. But more importantly, they showed calls to 3 different divorce attorneys starting back in February. Sophia had been planning to leave me for at least 4 months before Brenda's confession. Which meant the promotion celebration, the barbecue, all of it, had been a performance while she positioned herself to exit the marriage on her terms. Christine found emails between Sophia and one of those attorneys discussing asset valuation and strategies for claiming half the business. And there was even a spreadsheet Sophia had made, listing everything we owned with estimated values. She'd been calculating what she could take, right down to the furniture in my truck. This wasn't a woman who'd made a mistake. This was someone who'd been methodically planning to gut me financially while pretending everything was fine. Then Christine did something I hadn't expected. She reached out to Jessica, Kevin's wife, through her attorney. Turns out, Jessica was more than willing to talk because she was dealing with her own divorce from Kevin and had her own evidence of his pattern of affairs. Jessica provided a statement detailing how Kevin had done this before, how he cheated on her with at least 2 other married women from his workplace, and how he specifically targeted women in relationships because he got off on the drama and destruction. Christine used this to paint a picture not just of Sophia's calculated planning, but of Kevin as a serial homewrecker who'd pursued my wife as part of a pattern. It wasn't about Sophia being special or their connection being real. It was about Kevin collecting married women like trophies, and Sophia being naive enough to fall for it. Christine used all of this in our court filings, arguing that Sophia had acted in bad faith, had hidden her intentions while gathering financial information, and shouldn't be rewarded for strategic deception. Natalie tried to counter, saying Sophia had every right to consult attorneys and protect her interests, but the timeline made Sophia look calculated and dishonest. We had our first hearing in early August. I sat in that courtroom, watching Sophia testify about her contributions to the marriage, how she deserved half of everything. She was wearing this conservative dress, looking like the victim, and Natalie asked her questions designed to make it sound like she'd been an equal partner who'd sacrificed her own career growth to support my business. It was complete fiction. Sophia had always prioritized her marketing job, and I'd built my company on my own time. Then Christine got her turn, and it was brutal. She pulled up the phone records, showing when Sophia had first contacted Kevin, February 14th, Valentine's Day. Almost poetic in how twisted it was. She showed the timeline of Sophia consulting divorce attorneys while still sleeping next to me every night, still letting me plan our anniversary trip, still accepting the renovations I was doing on our house. Christine asked Sophia directly if she'd made the asset spreadsheet, and Sophia had to admit she had. When Christine asked why she needed that if she wasn't planning to divorce me, Sophia stammered something about wanting to understand our financial position, but it sounded weak. The judge's expression made it clear he wasn't buying it. Christine finished by asking if Sophia had ever told me she was unhappy or suggested counseling before starting her affair, and Sophia admitted she hadn't. The judge didn't make a final ruling that day, but he granted me continued sole access to the business accounts and indicated he was concerned about Sophia's credibility given the documented timeline of her planning. We had another hearing scheduled for late September to finalize asset division, but Christine felt confident we'd won the important battle. Sophia's attorney tried one more negotiation attempt, offering to accept 30% of assets if we settled immediately. I told Christine, absolutely not. We were going all the way. The final hearing happened on a Friday in late September and lasted almost 4 hours. The judge had reviewed everything. All the documentation about the house, my business records, Sophia's planning timeline, witness statements from the barbecue, including a written account from Brenda, who apparently felt guilty enough to help our side, and Jessica's testimony about Kevin's pattern. When the judge read his decision, he was clear about his reasoning. The house was awarded to me based on my pre-marriage purchase and substantial personal investment in renovations. My business remained solely mine since it existed before and independent of the marriage. And Sophia was entitled to a small settlement representing her contribution to mortgage payments over 4 years. It came out to about $40,000. Nowhere near the half of everything she'd been planning to take. The judge specifically mentioned her documented preparation to file for divorce while concealing her intentions as a factor in his decision, saying the court didn't reward strategic deception. Sophia started crying. Natalie tried to argue, but the judge said his decision was final. I walked out of that courthouse, and Christine told me the house would be legally mine once the paperwork processed. I thought about that for maybe 10 seconds before deciding I was selling it. I didn't want to live in a place that reminded me of Sophia every single day. I listed it 2 weeks later, and it sold fast because the neighborhood was desirable, and I'd done quality work on the renovations. I made a solid profit even after paying Sophia her settlement, and I used part of it to expand my landscaping business and buy a smaller place across town that was just mine. Sarah introduced me to her friend, Sophie, in November. We started seeing each other casually. I wasn't ready for anything serious, and Sophie understood that, but it was nice having someone to talk to who didn't know anything about my disaster of a marriage. My business grew because word got around about my work ethic and the quality renovations I could do. I heard through Sarah that Sophia and Kevin had moved in together. Honestly, I didn't care. They deserved each other. Brenda sent me an apology text around Christmas, saying she knew she'd blown up my life, but she thought I deserved to know the truth. And I actually thanked her. She was right. Living in ignorance while Sophia planned to destroy me would have been worse than the public humiliation of finding out at a barbecue. At least this way, I'd gotten ahead of it and protected what mattered. I still don't trust easily, and I probably won't for a long time. But I learned that sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is also the thing that saves you from wasting more years on the wrong person. What would you have done if you were me, standing at that grill, hearing that question? Would you have stayed calm and strategic, or would emotion have taken over?